Hey there, clan, and welcome to Dragon Age discussion, or whatever the hell I decide to call this. In this installment, we're going to be talking The Descent. Advanced warning, there will be spoilers ahead, so if you've not completed The Descent or watched it on YouTube, you may want to click off this video, because this is going to be nothing but spoilers, people. Let's dive into this, shall we? Or descend. Now, I cannot really talk about The Descent, the latest DLC for Dragon Age Inquisition, without talking about the dwarfs in general. The dwarves in the Dragon Age universe are definitely slightly more different than most dwarves in the other settings, like Lord of the Rings, but they're still dwarfs. They still have the beards, they still have their ale, they still have that stuff. But one important aspect of the dwarven culture that I've always enjoyed, and also kind of been like, holy crap, why the heck do they do this, is the shapery. Now, the Shapery, in a way, is sort of like the library of history of the Dwarven people. It's where they catalogue their history, their paragons, their houses, the noble bloodlines, keeping track of all that stuff. That's nothing surprising. A lot of cultures in this planet do this in fiction and in real life. The dwarves are no exception to this. And I do like the fact that they do that. However, one aspect of the Dwarven Shapery is very important. Erasing history. Now, I don't know how common it is. Now, unfortunately, Dwarven history, like Elven history, after the Blight hit, was pretty much lost. A lot of it was. The dwarves are a mere shadow of what they used to be. As you'll talk, a lot of the dwarves will talk about the days of old when the Dwarven Empire spanned from one end of Thedas to the other. And the Shapery makes no exception of that. History is recorded to an extent. But at the same time, a lot of history was lost. As it says, a lot of the tags were taken over by the Darkspawn, and they have never fully recovered, as the Darkspawn are a constant threat. But the Shapery records all history, and any history brought back is welcome to that, except certain aspects of history. The Shapery will on occasion, erase history. Now, how can you erase history? Well, erasing the books, erasing people, erasing events. The Descent actually makes an example of this with the Shaperer who follows you, whose name is, I do apologise, Valta, if memory serves, I believe that's how you pronounce it. She makes a note of this, the fact that she is a Shapery. Now, Shaperers normally do not leave the Shapery. They normally don't. They normally stay in Orzammar. Sometimes they will venture out as long as they're accompanied by, like, basically armed escorts to recover lost history. But she's out there with the Legion of the Dead to recover history, when in actual fact she's basically been said, go somewhere where you won't bother us, because she refused to erase a minute piece of history. A Balin supporter basically had ties to the Carta, the criminal organisation in Orzammar, and they wanted that erased. That is what happens in the Shapery and in Dwarven history. If you have enough influence and power, you can have events and sometimes even people erased from history in the Dwarven eyes. Now, of course, there is another reason that sometimes people are erased from history in the Dwarven culture, and that is if they are banished, disowned in a way. If they shame their house, they can be disowned. They can be, you're no longer part of this house. You are basically, in all sense of the words, dead to the house. You're worse than dead, actually. You never existed. And of course, there's the surface dwarves who are not seen as real dwarfs in some Dwarven eyes. But that's a good example of what the Descent actually deals with, is the fact that the dwarfs will happily erase history if it suits their needs, or there's a legitimate reason for that. And no example of that is best than the Titans. As I said, we find out in the Descent, the Titans are in this world. They are the shapers of this world, according to certain sections of Dwarven history that are recovered during the Descent. As it says, Valta does talk about them quite a bit. But that's interesting aspect, is the fact that was the knowledge of the Titans, because the Titans are not even a myth in a way, like they're only referenced occasionally, but a lot of dwarves don't even know of the Titans. Were the Titans a part of history that was just lost because of the Blight, or even beforehand? Or was it purposely erased because of Lydium, the blood of the Titans? Which is basically the only, well, not the only, but the major economical driving force of dwarven culture in the Dragon Age universe and all of Thedas. Everyone needs lyrium, and the only people who can supply lyrium are the dwarfs, because they're the ones that can mine it. So that's an interesting aspect that I think is quite fascinating, is that what if at some point in dwarven history, some people in power thought it would be best if the common folk, the casteless, the people beneath the noble houses, didn't know about the Titans. Maybe after the First Blight, when dwarven culture was pretty much all but nearly exterminated, they needed something to help recover it, and lyrium was a good example of that. They knew the magical potential of lyrium, and maybe they used it to help get Orzammar back on its feet, because without lyrium, I don't think Orzammar would have survived, or even dwarven culture would have survived. It would have probably shriveled away, and they would have to have expanded outwards instead of going deeper. So I have a little theory that possibly the Titan knowledge was purposely forgotten, erased from history, made sure that no one would even reference it, just so the fact that they could keep using the lyrium to make money and to survive, basically. That's a little theory I have, because if the dwarven people knew that that lyrium was the blood of their gods, of their creators, I don't think they'd be so eagerly awaiting to use it. It's just an interesting theory with the new revelation of the Titans, the fact that they do exist. They are a physical thing in this world. Their blood gives magical powers. It gives you the ability to use magic in some cases, as the Shalbadala are an example of. And of course, Valta's magical ability. But that's just a little theory I have, that I personally believe that it is possible that the history of the Titans was purposely erased by higher powers in the dwarven culture so they could make coin. It wouldn't surprise me. And eventually the knowledge was pretty much all but forgotten, and the Titans are mere myths now in some instances if people even know about it. It's an interesting theory. I don't know how much backs it up. But in all honesty, when it comes to dwarven culture and the Shapery itself, I really wouldn't put it past them erasing big events and big historical matters like that. That's at least a personal theory, at least. I don't know how much it pans out. Well, we'll have to move on to the next topic, I guess. Now, one other thing that is definitely apparent in this DLC is, of course, the song. The stone song that Valta hears, that all dwarves in a way can hear. So Valta just happens to be much more attuned to the stone in some cases. Now, the way I view it, at least the way that I'm talking about it, is the fact that this songstone is actually the connection between the dwarfs and the Titans themselves. I do believe that the Titan, maybe if it could possibly, did create the dwarfs, or the dwarfs in a way were so interconnected and lived in the stone and underground with the Titans and worshipping them as gods that they grew sort of like a mental connection with them, so much so that it's almost ingrained in their culture and their being. But as it says of course they are exposed to lyrium pretty much all the time. As it says, in fact, sometimes overexposure to the lyrium can make a person go crazy. They could say they hear things. But I definitely think that's quite an interesting aspect of the fact that the deeper we got to the Titan, the stronger it got. Like, that makes sense. But why was Valta one of the only ones who could hear it more clearly than the others? Maybe in dwarven culture there are people, or dwarfs, who are more attuned to the stone than other people. Very much in the same way how certain people and elves, and even Kunari, are attuned to magic. I personally believe that the Songstone, the way that Valta connects to it, is very similar to that. Is the fact that she was sort of in a way, and we find out later on what happens to her when she becomes one of the first dwarven mages in a long, long time. Dwarves could be mages in the past. There were dwarven mages in the past. But dwarven history has no answer to why they just stopped. I have a theory in that case. I believe that Valta is one of these mages born to be a mage, born to be a dwarf, only, as I say, it's unlike, say, an elf who was born with this kind of ability. She wasn't connected to the Fade or the dream world in that way. She was a dwarf. She didn't have that kind of connection. But what she did have was the song. The song of the stone. The song. The voice of the Titan. That helped guide her to gaining magic again. She was able to get magic again. She was able to become a dwarven mage. Which is very interesting that that happened right now. Especially with the breach opening up. And the breach is the main reason the Titan became active again. I definitely think that those who have strong stone sense, like Valta, have the potential to be dwarven mages. And that definitely leads into my other little theory, is the fact that the reason that dwarves do not have a connection to the Fade in the Dragon Age universe is because while the Fade is the main aspect where all mages draw their magic and their power, dwarves didn't draw it from there. Dwarves drew it from the Titans. The Titans maybe gifted this to them, or gifted it to the select few, the power of magic, and in a way protected them from the dangers of the Fade. Because that's something I kind of find interesting, is the fact that Valta gained magic after being exposed to the Titan. The Titan chose her to have magic, gave her that power. She didn't do what the Shabatal, I think that's how you pronounce it, did. They didn't down Lydium and cut their tongues out. She was exposed to sort of like a vein or heart of Lydium that we had to fight and kill, of course, but we didn't kill it. But that gave her magic because I believe the Titan wanted her to have magic. The Titan gave her something that was lost to the dwarves for centuries, if not longer. The gift of magic. And I do believe that the dwarven mages of old are the same. They did not get magic. They had a strong stone sense. And due to this factor, they also grew a connection to the Titans. And then they eventually maybe worshipped it enough, or prayed enough, or were exposed to it enough to gain magic. Or the Titan gifted selected dwarven people magic. And maybe these mages were seen as maybe clerics or priests in a way of the Titans. They were living vessels of the Titan in a way to have able to harness this power. The Titan willingly gave their blood to this person, to this dwarf, to get this power. That's at least how I kind of view it. That's how I definitely, that to me is a very good instance to how that is. It's just too coincidental. The Valta gets magic the moment she's exposed to the Titan, and she also had an incredibly strong stone sense. That she was able to sense the Titan and also feel it in a way. And of course, when we find out that Lydium is the blood of the Titan, it surprises her. And definitely opens up a lot of questions in that matter. It's definitely quite an interesting idea, at least, when it comes to that. Now, when it comes to Lydium, the realization that Lydium is the blood of dwarven gods in a way, Titans, beings that help shape the land, that with mere movement or mere willpower can cause massive earthquakes. Why would it do it now? Well, we know now, we know an answer. The breach. As it says, Valta has a connection with the Titan to the point where she could probably communicate with it. The breach woke it up. But then it asks the question, what about those other Lydium veins that were destroyed, or at least buried? Were those veins of previous Titans? Is the Titan that we see in the Descent of the Last Titan? The rest maybe died off, or found their final resting place where the Lydium was just drawn out of them to the point in which they died. You draw enough blood out of something, it will eventually die. But then it comes to another aspect. Lydium, like Justice from the Awakening DLC, says it sings to him. Very much in line with the dwarves. It sings to the dwarves in a way. The Titans sing to them. Lydium sings to spirits. That is the main aspect, I think, what draws spirits and demons to this world, is the fact that Lydium is, in a way, the calling of an old god, in a way. But then we have to move on to the other thing. As it says, Bianca was the first one to break the theory that Lydium was alive. Then we move on to Red Lydium. And it being tainted. The Primeval Tag. Probably one of the oldest tags there are, hence the Primeval in my opinion. That is the question. Was that Tag the carcass of another Titan that became tainted with the blight? And is that possibly where the blight actually started? Maybe not in that particular location, but maybe the blight is an aspect of a Titan becoming tainted with something. We still do not know to an extent what the taint fully is. We know that it's dark magic and something along those lines, but we don't know where it originated from. Like, the Chantry, we cannot believe the Chantry's word that it came from the Magisters. It could have, but then I ask the question, how did a primeval Tide become tainted? Was a Magister there? Possibly. Or maybe a Darkspawn was there and just decided nom 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 on the Lydium. But then another example of that is the relic that Varric and Hawk found in the primeval Tag. That sung to Bartran. That sung to Meredith. I think that was her name. The crazy Templar woman, Meredith with the big sword. It sung to Bartran. It sung to Dwarf. That's fine. That's understandable. That was then that means that Lydium was possibly part of a Titan. It had that power it had the same power that the Valta kind of had. The Titan was able to speak to Valta calmly, understandingly, telling her the explanation. The blighted Titan blood, Lydium, and that idol, that didn't just speak to people, that drove them insane. That tried to control them, manipulate them, twist them into its own little plaything. And then of course it summons demons and all the lovely, lovely stuff. But it also grants power as well. It granted immense power to Meredith. But then it destroyed her, turned her into for all we know, a red Lydium statue. It's an interesting theory, is the fact that what if that idol was part of a Titan? One aspect of a Titan, the Lydium, carved into this idol that maybe was part of a Titan, and then it still retained that residual power to be able to speak to people. Dwarves it could speak to easily, could manipulate them maybe a bit easier. Humans, on the other hand, it takes a bit longer. It takes more time for it to be exposed. For a decade, actually. I think that's how long Meredith. I think Meredith either had it roughly a decade or at least a couple of years. But it took a while for it to affect Meredith in that way. It slowly whispered in her ear, manipulating her, causing her to go paranoid, not paranoid, mostly paranoid. But then crazy and just bloodthirsty in a way. That's kind of interesting, the fact that Red Lydium is a blighted Titan then. And that's something I don't think we want to face. Because a blighted Titan? That would be massive and world destroying. Maybe it's already dead because of that. We now know that Lydium, Red Lydium, is just that. It is the blight. It's kind of interesting to see what that leads to there. It leads to a lot more theories. The aspect of that, what if another Titan, what if the Titan that we encountered in the Descent becomes tainted? But the Darkspawn were running away from them. But that was mostly due to the Shabatal. What the hell they pronounce Shabatal? The crazy Lydium doped up people, I'll call them that. But that's an interesting little aspect, the fact that Red Lydium did that, but what happens if a living Titan was exposed to this? What if, as the Red Lydium veins that are in the primeval Tag are the remains of a dead Titan have been tainted? And if that Red Lydium could be tainted, what about the rest of it? What if eventually it spread? There's a lot of interesting theories. But then there's one last theory. Let's give my thoughts on. There has been one common thing when it comes to the two recent DLCs. Jaws of Hakon and The Descent. That is history. The history that we don't know. The most common thing I've found in these DLCs is that particular thing. History could be wrong. For example, in Jaws of Hakon, we find out that not only was the first Inquisitor not a human, he was an elf. Not only did he have someone in his life who he loved and cared about, and not only that, but he also worshipped the elven pantheon of gods along with the Andrastian. He respected that. The Chantry changed it to make him a human fighter who was celibate, apparently. He was also a mage, that's beside the point. That's also an interesting factor. And then we look at the Dwarven one with the Descent. The Titans, possibly erased from history. Lost knowledge that we have forgotten. Revelations. History being erased to benefit people. That is an interesting little aspect of Dwarven culture, and the Jaws of Hakon, the Descent and Jaws of Hakon have in common, is the fact that these DLCs are definitely sending a similar message, is the fact that we still do not know this world. Even the written and recorded history could be wrong. And even the stuff we don't know that could be wrong, we still do not know all aspects of it. The idea of the Titans was something that I never expected. Now, I had a theory when it came to the aspect of the Lydium being alive, that what the hell does that mean? Does that mean there's something that produces it? I did not think it would be something like a Titan. But it is an interesting aspect to understand that both these DLCs are sending the same message. Is that they're sending the message that maybe there's still a lot about this world that we do not know. And that the recorded history that we do know might not be right. It's definitely an interesting thing to think about. And it's definitely a common message I see coming across when it comes to these DLCs. Now the question is, what will the next DLC hold? That's an important question. Now BioWare have been teasing a little bit, it might lead to Canary. That should be very interesting. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed my little theory crafting and my quick thoughts. I hope you enjoyed it, and feel free to share your own little theories and thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you want to, feel free to click that subscribe button. Other than that, I thank you for watching. As always, I'm Scottish Warrior 92, and I'll see you all next time. Ciao for now.